Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Dr. Barry back on Good London News. Now, this is a video you've got to watch. This explains the origins of sheriff, why the Americans have a sheriff's office, and why here in Australia we have two sheriff's offices, one actually operating, the other working on it. This is a fantastic video to watch. You'll learn a lot from it. And they call themselves constitutional sheriffs, but all sheriffs come from common law. Here in Australia, we work under common law, but we should include our constitution because we have one too. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much. Let's get straight into this video, watch it, share it, and understand it, because we got to play in their sandpit because it's fictional. Maritime law, it's all fiction. But it only applies to persons. But we must learn it, fight in it, do your best to be in it, because they keep in the goalposts. But eventually you go back to common law, and under our constitution, if we can get it back up and running again, we can take these people to task and put them where they belong, out of circulation, in jail preferably. London News sign off. Thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe and share. Bye for now.
It's election season in America, from local mayors and members of Congress all the way up to the White House.
The next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Please welcome the once and future president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
And the nation could not be more starkly divided.
There's never been a lunatic like this in the White House.
If re-elected, he will be a dictator on day one.
It's a time when Americans are sour about the economy, anxious about abortion, worried about the southern border, and witnessing the return of political violence. In the battleground state of Arizona, a fringe group of anti-government sheriffs is injecting itself directly into this political fight, vowing to take the law into their own hands.
If I'm the sheriff, nobody's going to take advantage of my citizens.
But really, who in our country are being attacked? Which groups?
White middle class.
We fell asleep and we trusted government. Now they're destroying our country and they're destroying our Constitution.
On the cusp of historic elections, what does this mean for America? And what could these groups do to influence the outcome?
What we have is a situation of people with great authority, with weapons, that unfortunately seem to be going rogue.
Arizona is dry, hot, and politically divided. I've come to this ranch on the outskirts of the state's capital, Phoenix, to meet someone who wants to be a politician, but with a badge and a gun.
Hi, Jerry. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you, Darren. Jerry Sheridan.
Pleased to meet you, mate. Thank you so much for having us on your ranch.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Who are these beautiful guys?
This is Buck.
Buck.
And this is Gus.
It's real cowboy land out here, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me show you around.
Jerry Sheridan is a career law enforcement officer. He spent nearly 40 years reporting to the sheriff of Maricopa County. Now, he wants to be the next sheriff.
Oh. This is my small collection of firearms. Modest collection. I consider it modest. I'm very lucky. I have 3 submachine guns, and here in Arizona, we have very few gun laws.
I'm going to go out on a limb, Jerry, and guess you're probably a pretty big Second Amendment gun rights guy.
I am a big Second Amendment guy. Our country was founded on 2 principles: freedom of speech, freedom and liberty, and the guns to make sure that nobody takes that away from us.
Mm-hmm.
For Jerry, liberty and firearms go hand in hand.
It's like some people collect coins, some people collect dolls. I collect guns.
So if America went to hell in a handbasket, you'd have all the guns.
Well, nobody's going to take advantage of the Sheridan family, I'll tell you that right now. And if I'm the sheriff, nobody's going to take advantage of my citizens.
When you hear the word sheriff, this may be what you're thinking of. But sheriffs still exist today, and they can still wield considerable power. They oversee each of America's roughly 3,000 counties, which can be as small as a few hundred people or as large as several million. Just like police, they hold extensive powers to launch criminal investigations, seize evidence, enforce immigration laws, and control the county jail. But unlike the police chief, a sheriff is locally elected to 4-year terms in most states. They're largely unaccountable and difficult to remove from office. Here in Maricopa, America's 4th largest county, Jerry is running for sheriff as a Republican. He first needs to win a primary election against 2 other Republican rivals, then face a Democrat candidate on the same day as the presidential election in November. But there's one thing that sets Jerry apart from his rivals. He adheres to a fringe anti-government ideology that the sheriff holds ultimate power in their county and is not answerable to any federal authority, including the president.
We seem to be getting less and less and less freedoms because of the tyranny of the federal government enacting all kinds of laws.
Like what?
Taxation generally, the EPA laws, or when we had COVID in 2020, okay? There were a lot of government mandates to wear masks, to close down restaurants, and so as a constitutional sheriff, I would not enforce those unconstitutional mandates.
Jerry believes the sheriff's power stems directly from the Constitution.
A constitutional sheriff will make sure that our elections are free to all people and that they're not corrupted in any way. And so if the sheriff finds a corruption in the election system, the sheriff can actually do something and arrest people.
So you see a role for the sheriff in the election process?
Oh, absolutely, I do.
Dogs are on.
It's a crazy time to be running for elected office right now. How does the family really reflect on what's happening in America right now?
It saddens me. It makes me angry.
I think people across the country are done with the liberal left that wants to turn the United States of America into a socialist country.
And the illegals. They're illegals.
It's not how Washington classifies them.
We do.
Our last liberal sheriff called them guests.
That's right, they were undocumented guests.
I mean, we have an invasion, and there is nothing else you can call it on our southern border. It's time for this country to take stuff back.
Do you think that there'd be people who would want to sort of take up arms to take their country back? Do you see that potential?
Well, I would hope that would never happen. But read this after the question you just asked. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So our founding fathers knew that someday that this country would go down the road that they didn't want it to. But they wanted to keep their citizens armed so it would never happen. And so this is always a...
There's a lot of anger and disaffection around Jerry's dinner table.
Hey, I'm Jerry Sheridan. I'm running for sheriff here in Maricopa County. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Jerry Sheridan, running for sheriff in Maricopa County. Hi, I'm Jerry. Hey, I'm Jerry. I'm running for sheriff here in Maricopa County.
With the primary just a few days away, Jerry is making a campaign appearance with his core demographic.
Did I get your vote?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, very good. You want to protect your Second Amendment rights, I'm the guy.
People here are looking to candidates like Jerry and Donald Trump to represent their idea of what America ought to be. In these parts, there's disillusionment with modern America, anger at the Democrat-led federal government, and widespread buy-in to the unsubstantiated allegations that the 2020 election was stolen.
2020 was stolen, obviously. There's too much evidence to say it wasn't.
If it eventuated that Kamala Harris won the election, would you suspect that there was some funny business going on there?
Absolutely.
I want him to get in bad. It's almost as important as getting Trump in to get him in.
Okay, well, we're voting for him.
Yeah.
This is Richard Mack. He's a former sheriff who has endorsed Jerry.
We will not survive Kamala Harris.
No.
The Constitution's already on her deathbed.
Things are going to hell. Things are going to hell.
He's also the founder of a controversial group called the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, the CSPOA.
Well, this is what I do now. I go around teaching about what you and I were just talking about. Okay. I teach the Constitution to law enforcement and public officials. Yeah. So, do we follow and enforce the United States Constitution? Well, I make sure we do.
Well, that's the kind of person that we need.
Thanks,
You're
man.
the kind of guy we need, buddy.
All right, have a safe trip. Thank you,
You
sir.
got our vote, sir.
Thank you.
You got our vote.
Okay,
Thanks again.
the sheriff is the top executor of the law. Well, he can defend the people from the abuse and the oppression and the bullying of the federal government. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're in government, doesn't matter if they're a street criminal. Violate the law, you will be investigated and we will correct you. This is the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of America. This is powerful, powerful stuff. It proves that the federal government is not our boss. Okay, so first of all, we're not a democracy. We never have been.
Mack has invited me to one of his CSPOA training seminars.
And let's see, now why did they prosecute Trump?
He says he's delivered this session to hundreds of sheriffs in at least 13 states. The Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting says it's state-approved and taxpayer-funded in at least 6 of those states, and that the CSPOA also has supporters who sit on 3 state boards in charge of law enforcement training standards.
So we're not picking on blacks anymore. So they say, unless they believe the wrong things, and then we'll go after them too. But really, who in our government, who in our country are being attacked or censored or demeaned or bullied? Which groups?
White middle class.
How about Catholics? Have they been attacked?
Yes.
Christians?
Yes.
You mentioned that. And so, where do we go? Where do the people of Maricopa County or any other county go when government becomes venile, oppressive, and abusive?
To their sheriff.
And I hope that's the answer. Not only should we disobey unjust laws, and that's all of us, but what if your sheriff is standing next to you when you're committing those acts of civil disobedience? How about just with gun control alone? You don't think Kamala's coming for your guns?
Oh, no. Yes, she is.
The sheriffs are going to have to make a big decision. Let's talk about election fraud. The greatest election fraud happening in our country right now, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If government ever becomes destructive of those ends, it is the right of the people, it is the duty of the people to throw off such government. Not vote it out, throw off. And so I do not advocate and never have advocated violence. But tell me what America looks like if Kamala Harris is being sworn in as president. Our Constitution cannot afford one more destructive force.
They are hoping to create a country where everyone is essentially following the rules that they set out, whether it's personally, politically, based on their own religious affiliations, while also attempting to radicalize law enforcement.
We want those fucking traitors!
Sandwiched between Maricopa County and the border with Mexico is Pima County. Down here, there's a lawman with a very different idea of what a sheriff should be.
I am running against some people who have views of the right of what law enforcement should be, a warrior. My opinion is not of a warrior. Law enforcement, our cops, our deputies need to be guardians, and I've always said that.
Sheriff Chris Nanos is also in the midst of a primary election battle, but for the Democratic nomination.
If you believe in what we're doing and that it's the right thing, get that word out. Every vote's going to count. So, put all that aside, let's get back to work.
Sheriff Nanos is doing his rounds at the county jail. All inmates here are under his protection.
Do you think that constitutional sheriffs would be making terrible decisions around who they keep in the jail and who they let out of the jail?
Why wouldn't I? I can make what if I am all superior, I don't have to listen to the federal government. It is a slippery slope. But what I really think is dangerous is that you have people who run for this job, who run for this office, with the belief that they are going to be all-powerful, that they have no rules that apply to them, that they set the rules, and they set this, and that is hogwash.
Sheriff Nanos says some sheriff candidates are voicing far-right ideology for political gain.
What a shame. That rhetoric's never harmless. The hate speech, the hate mongering, the promotion of hatred over this group, that group, the migrants, the LGBTQ, whatever group you want. There's no place in this country for hate.
But in Arizona, Sheriff Nanos says he is increasingly a lone voice in the wilderness.
Sheriff, what are your biggest concerns around this movement?
You know, we had an SB 1070 law. It had a lot of issues where our deputies, our law enforcement agencies could stop you for no other reason that they believed you were in this country illegally. It allowed for racial profiling, something you never want in your agencies. That's what your constitutional sheriffs are bringing in. Justice is blind for a reason. What they're doing is they're taking that blindfold off. It is getting dangerous.
I want to put some of the allegations against the constitutional sheriff movement to the man behind the ideology.
We're joined tonight by Sheriff Richard Mack. He honestly doesn't really need an introduction.
Richard Mack has invited us back to his home, where he's being interviewed on a far-right podcast.
Each and every episode, we believe it's a uniparty in D.C.,
and conspiracy theories aren't hard to come by.
The fear-mongering of J6, let's face it, that was a Fedsurrection. We know it. More information keeps coming out every day.
But this is what the big problem is. It is so corrupt in Washington, D.C., that this is going to be the same old, change the name on the door, and keep doing the same old crap.
Sometimes good men are going to have to do the things that other people do not want to do. God bless you guys. God bless you, Sheriff Mack. Thank you, sir.
See you guys soon. Thanks so much.
You know what the Second Amendment really guarantees? It guarantees what our founding fathers did, our right to rebel. And if government ever gets so venile and oppressive that we have to do that, and believe me, I do not support violence, but if it's ever necessary again like it was in the Revolutionary War, we have to be capable of doing that.
I think what gets your critics so riled up is use of language like that. Like we have the right to rebel.
We do.
But that concerns a lot of people.
You don't think that we should have it? They don't think we should have it? We should always succumb to government. That's what they're saying.
At a time, right, in this country where there are huge political divisions, huge cultural divisions, culture wars over everything.
So in all that, and we shouldn't have guns.
And talk of civil war. What could happen if these sides can't reconcile? How bad can things get? And then you throw into the mix rhetoric like, we have the right to rebel. And let's be honest, your side have got all the guns, right?
But the alternative to what you're saying is 10 times worse than what I'm saying.
Which is what?
Complete tyranny and complete government takeover and dictatorships and totalitarian government. That is enslaving.
Your critics will say that's a conspiracy theory.
It's not conspiracy theory when you look at the condition of our country. And not every rebellion has to be violent. But we have that guarantee if it ever does happen again.
I suppose the criticism there would be that the CSPOA exists in the same ecosystem as a lot of fringe groups that could potentially pose dangers to society.
We have no
part of a broader insurrectionist ideology that's emerged, particularly since the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm. I think that's stupid. I'm not responsible for what other people believe.
But your critics say that you have no problem sharing a stage with white supremacists or with people who are racists.
Right. That's a lie also.
For political benefit. For getting an audience.
So I'm a racist because once I had somebody that got up there that used to belong to an organization that was racist. And so you have never hung around a person that had racial views? And okay, and I don't agree with the white supremacist that Sam Bushman has on his radio show. I don't agree. I don't see where it hurts anybody.
This whole movement and the ecosystem that the CSPOA exists in is trying to rewind America in terms of values, in terms of faith, in terms of the way the law is enforced. And they see that as taking America back like 100 or so years into like a dark ages, right?
Thank God. And I hope we do it. And they will benefit from it as well.
It's primary polling day. Most Arizonans mail in their ballots, but some have braved the summer heat to vote in person.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for voting. I hope you would vote for Ginny for mayor to continue.
Linda Somo is here as an election day volunteer. After retiring from teaching, this great-grandmother decided her next passion would be protecting democracy.
If we cannot vote, we don't have a voice in what happens to our future and the future of our kids, our grandkids.
Linda and the Alliance were called into action in midterm elections 2 years ago, when Arizona became ground zero for election fraud conspiracies, spread in part by the CSPOA and constitutional sheriffs. Far-right activists began turning up at ballot boxes armed and masked.
These are some photos of the armed guards that were by the ballot boxes in the last election that we stopped from happening. So you can see they're,
carrying firearms.
Carrying firearms. Their faces were covered.
If I saw that guy at a ballot box, I would run in the other direction, I think.
Yeah, and most people did. They're definitely part of the MAGA group. They, still, even though there's never been a shred of evidence of any kind that would indicate that there was mass fraud in the last election, they still insist that the election was stolen.
It was part of a wave of armed ballot box monitoring, including by two groups with ties to the constitutional sheriffs, the Yavapai County Preparedness Team and the Lions of Liberty.
How concerned are you that elected law enforcement officials are spreading election misinformation?
I'm very concerned. Those are people, our elected officials are ones we normally look up to and trust. And if they start spreading misinformation, disinformation, our government is just one more step in the grave. It's scary. As far as our democracy is concerned, I'm worried about the future.
It's 7 p.m. and primary polling stations have just closed across Arizona. Jerry Sheridan's campaign team, his supporters and his family have gathered at this downtown Phoenix restaurant.
He's facing off against Jerry Sheridan. That's the party you're at tonight.
If he wins tonight, he'll go on the Republican ticket for sheriff in November.
Oh, look at this. Here's the cheat coming. Here's the cheat coming.
With the majority of votes counted, it'll be hard to catch Jerry from here.
I would be a constitutional sheriff, and that should scare the Democrats, because the Constitution protects everyone.
Down in Pima County, Sheriff Nanos has also just secured his party's nomination.
We will move forward into November, and with all of the voters' help, we hope we'll continue on.
Vowing to continue the fight against the constitutional sheriffs.
That's not who we are as chiefs or sheriffs. That's not who we are as police officers or deputies. And that's not who we are as a community.
And for the America that he and his supporters want to see.
Welcome to the county seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Today we are going to talk about one of the most traditional offices in county government, the county sheriff. You know, the office, or at least the functions of county sheriff, date clear back to the 9th century, when the shire had an official who was elected by the people to represent the serfs' interests to the king. And that's the origin of the sheriff, and traditionally that office has stayed with us ever since.
You know, one of the misconceptions by the general public is that we are constitutional. And you always have to make that correction that we derive our authority from the state statute. And where we're really getting defensive as sheriffs in Utah is the last 2 years we've had to deal with legislation that has pushed for us to become appointed officials versus elected officials. And we believe that is a dangerous road to go down anytime you're taking the voice from the people and handing it off to a single body, such as a commission.
So realistically, I think that one of the things that has taken place is that within some sheriff's departments within the state of Utah, there has been some problems and some things that have hit the press. With this, the natural tendency is to say, why are we electing instead of appointing the individual to become the sheriff? I think that what has to be remembered is that in any organization, whether we're talking business or we're talking government, we either hire or we either elect. And when we do this, we're always trying to elect or hire the best person for the position. Sometimes that doesn't work, whether it's an appointed position or whether it's an elected position. And we have to be realistic, and I don't believe it's good business to turn around and jump to a conclusion just because you may have a couple of bad eggs within your state.
I would agree with that, but the concern I have is a separation of powers. Within the county construct, within the way the county's elected officers are put together, the commissioners in a county already are the legislative, they can do county ordinances, and they're the executive in that county. If the sheriff was taken out of the elected genre and put into an appointed department head, then you have the commission basically judge, jury, and executioner. I mean, you end up with them as a legislative authority, as the executive authority, and then if they can appoint who they would like through whatever vetting process other than voting the sheriff through appointments, then you have subverted what I believe is the best method, which is election, to select an individual who is going to represent each individual county member by an elective authority and keep it in the elected area.
But some people would argue that the electorate doesn't really vote for anything more than a name. The guy that's got the most posters out wins the election as sheriff, at least in the larger counties. I think in a more rural county, everybody already knows who he is. So why not make that an appointment and hold your elected officials accountable for the appointments they make?
The same argument could be made for commissioner. Why not just appoint them and have the state do it? I mean, literally, you can go up that chain until you only have one or two elected officials in the county, and then you have basically a state that's running everything. Counties are political subdivisions of the state, but they have the autonomy based on the statutory authorities right now, as long as the legislature leaves it alone, to have that differentiation and that splitting of the authority by having elected persons in all those areas: county attorney, sheriff, the recorder, and the commission.
So I believe one of the things that we have to realize is that the state of Utah right now is going through some growing pains. We are growing up, especially along the Wasatch Front. But we have to remember that the state is a very, very large area. There's a lot of rural counties that are out there, and that we have to respect the fact that if you take Cache County, I believe that Logan City is the only one that has a paid police force. So the county sheriff's department is actually running the rest of the cities and overseeing them. That becomes a very big job as far as that goes. Some of the larger, if you take Davis County, I believe out of the 15 cities, I think 12 of the 15 have their own paid police force. So it's a different economy as far as what happens within a rural county with what may be happening in an urban county with how things are. And I think we have to be very careful not to jump to a conclusion based upon this situation or this situation. We have to look at the state as a whole.
I was just sitting here having a thought. We're talking about shifting the sheriff from being elected to being appointed. You'd be the guy who would have to appoint him. Is that a job that you and your fellow commissioners would want?
Well, I had the opportunity, being a past mayor of Layton City, that we actually had the police chief retire, and we did hire a new police chief. And we did go through a process of interviewing. In fact, we opened it up countrywide to see what was out there. Some of the things that we did want to make sure of is that we had a personality that would fit within our community. That became very important, but it was also very, very knowledgeable with what was there. And again, we ended up with a very good police chief in Layton City at this time. At the county level, we'd have to be doing the same thing. I do agree that it does open up the opportunity to be able to look into the person's background and to be able to pick out of as many people that want to apply. But it still comes down to that question as far as that individual with everything that he's going to be doing throughout that county, and is it something that he should be answering to the people, not to the elected commissioners?
Do you think that could go astray?
Absolutely. I think the other issue that I'm trying to protect in my thought process on keeping it elected is that it keeps I would like to see the state move to the point where a sheriff's election is nonpartisan. Right now they're partisan. And so you can end up with the selected sheriff before you ever get to the main election or even to the primaries because of what comes out of the conventions for the different parties. You may not have but one single person going forward as a candidate. That then puts politics back into the center of what of the office of all offices that should be non-political, should be those who enforce the law. So in my thoughts, I would like to see the state go to like the city mayors and the school boards. They're nonpartisan races. I would like to see the sheriff office elections go to nonpartisan. That way you could protect the whims of any political party from how the law is enforced.
What do you guys think about that?
I don't know that party affiliation has a whole lot to do with my job day in and day out. I enforce the law according to the law, and obviously we have some discretion in our decision making, but you elect the person for that, not necessarily a party for that. And so I don't necessarily disagree with Jim on this. It's just one of them things where I think there's argument on both sides of that fence, but I'm not really decided as to whether I should be partisan or not.
Partisan. Well, that's a good point. And it's a good point for us to take a break. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about constitutional sheriff, some of the challenges that it presents, general and a couple of other offices at the state level. There are no constitutionally defined elected offices anywhere in the Constitution, but it does refer to election processes and elective people. Is that an incongruity that probably should be changed? Because there are references to elections of local officers, but their offices are not constitutionally defined.
We would like to see it changed as county sheriffs, and I think most county elected officials would like to be, most of the elected officials would like that office written into the Constitution to be required. Because like I said, our biggest issue from the Sheriff's Association is that we deal with a piece of legislation that wants to appoint us. And we think that's unhealthy to take the voice from the people. And also, it does place the power of legislative and executive solely under one body, your county commission group, regardless of how they're structured. And so we would love to see it written in there that we are required under the Constitution to exist. That way, the voice of the people is more difficult to take away. Because in order to become constitutional sheriffs, the Constitution has to be opened up, and then also it has to pass by much more than a majority. It has to be a 2/3 vote from the legislature in order to accomplish the constitutionality of our office.
Would it